Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Good to be here.
So, our whole mission here is to take all this chaos of information that you see online and just boil it down.
Right, to give you the intellectual shortcuts.
Exactly. The shortcuts you need to really get a handle on what the heck is actually going on. And today we have a huge one. We pulled together a massive stack of source material on what is really a cultural fault line.
It's a huge convergence point. I mean, it connects so many different worlds. You've got this beloved 1980s nostalgia franchise.
Stranger Things.
Right. Then you have this intense, dedicated geek culture. You've got powerful Hollywood executives, the biggest union strikes we've seen in a generation, and all of it crashing into the totally inevitable rise of artificial intelligence.
It is, like you said, maybe the most important flashpoint we've seen in the creative industries lately. For months, we've all been tracking this kind of general anxiety around generative AI.
Oh, yeah, it's been everywhere. The debates about copyright, about training data, job security. But it always felt a little abstract, A future problem.
A what if.
Exactly, a what if. And then all of a sudden, a globally dominant franchise like Stranger Things gives us this concrete, undeniable piece of evidence. It showed everyone that this conflict isn't coming anymore.
It's already here. It's playing out on a computer screen in the background of a documentary that nobody was expecting to be controversial.
And that's where it started, right, with the fans.
It always does these days.
Mm-hmm.
Eagle-eyed, extremely dedicated fans watching a behind-the-scenes documentary that was, I guess you could say, a little too revealing.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today isn't just to talk about a scandal with one TV show. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This whole deep dive is designed to be a shortcut.
A shortcut to understanding why.
Yes. Why the entire creative world, we're talking writers, actors, musicians, everyone, is at the same time completely terrified of and yet also deeply dependent on these new AI tools.
It's the perfect microcosm. The whole Duffer Brothers accusation, whether it's true or not, it serves as this perfect little case study for the much bigger conflict.
What's that conflict?
It's the clash between, on one hand, the cold, hard fiscal reality. I mean, companies are always going to prioritize the most cost-effective tools available. That's just business.
And on the other hand,
the powerful, emotional, artistic backlash from the actual people whose livelihoods, whose sense of craft and creative identity are being, threatened or even stripped away by those exact same tools.
So over the next 30, 40 minutes, we are not just staying in one writer's room. We're going to go from this potential scandal over the writing of season 5.
To exploring how the music industry is, the sources say it's already cooked.
We'll get into the rise of AI performers. They're calling them synthetics in the industry now.
Which is a very Blade Runner term.
It is. And we'll look at the really uncomfortable, sometimes pretty disturbing realities of navigating what is quickly starting to look like a post-labor creative society.
So let's unpack this. We have to start where the audience did, with the fan unrest that was brewing even before the AI.
Okay, let's get into it. So the sources are really clear that the AI discovery wasn't the first problem. It was actually the second wave of intense fan scrutiny that was aimed at the Duffer Brothers and the show's quality.
Right. The first wave, the pre-AI hysteria, was something the fan base themselves called conformity.
Conformity gate. I like it.
And that's a really crucial place to start because it gives you the mindset of the audience. They were already primed for this. The dissatisfaction really started after the ending of the last season. I mean, commercially, it was a gigantic success for Netflix.
Of course.
But a very vocal, very significant chunk of the fan base just not happy. And that led to this huge online rumor mill.
And what the sources make clear is that conformity gate wasn't just, I didn't like this plot point. It was deeper.
Yeah.
It was this fan fear that the creators were conforming to something else.
Something external. Yeah. They specifically believed that the Duffer Brothers were caving to internal Netflix corporate demands, or maybe just popular opinion.
Instead of sticking to their original artistic vision.
Exactly. They felt like the creative soul of the show had been sort of sacrificed for the corporate mandate, that the brand was now more important than.
And that feeling, that sense of artistic betrayal, is what gave birth to this myth.
Yeah.
The myth of the super secret ending.
Ah, yes, the secret.
Fans literally convinced themselves that the true, high-quality, non-conforming ending was still out there, that it was hidden, and they even picked 2 different dates that this non-existent revelation was supposed to happen.
Which is just wild.
So first, they claimed it would drop on the 7th of a particular month. That day comes and goes. No secret ending, no supernatural plot twist.
So what did they do?
They just moved the goalpost. They insisted, no, the actual final date for this super secret episode is the 12th. And significantly, that date just happened to coincide with the release of the documentary about the making of the show.
So they thought the documentary was going to contain the secret.
Or trigger it or reveal it somehow. But, well, as we know, the 12th came and went. No secret episode, no hidden twist, nothing. But this fan base, who were already in this highly suspicious, almost forensic state of mind, they didn't just shrug and move on.
No, their focus just shifted.
It shifted drastically, right into the background of that very document.
And the details here are pretty incredible. The sources describe the audience acting like, investigative journalists, maybe even beyond that.
One source used let's say, a vivid and maybe a little controversial analogy. They described this fan base's level of diligence as being similar to the QAnon crowd.
Wow.
For their just forensic, frame-by-frame approach to finding hidden details, no matter how tiny.
And that intense level of dedication is exactly why they found it. The smallest possible thing that has now become this huge industry talk.
Which was?
The ChatGPT tabs open on a computer screen, just visible for a second in the background of the documentary.
On a computer, it was presumably being used by a staff member in the writer's room or, the production office. Just sitting there.
And the jump in logic was immediate. It was total, and it was visceral.
The conclusion was, if the Duffer Brothers team had tabs open for a large language model, they must be using AI to write Stranger Things Season 5.
It immediately became the new, convenient, technological explanation for why they thought the quality was declining. It was perfect.
It replaced the old rumor, which was that one of the brothers got divorced and his wife was the secret ghostwriter.
Right, that was the old theory. Now it's an accusation of creative laziness, corporate betrayal, cost-cutting, all rolled into one image.
And we have to stop and emphasize the unbelievable irony of the timing here. Season 5 filming, which was just about to start, had been specifically delayed. Why? Because of the Writers Guild of America strike, the WGA strike. They were going on for months.
A strike that was fundamentally about the future of human creativity in Hollywood.
It's just a stunning piece of irony. I mean, the core fight the WGA was waging, the reason thousands of people were sacrificing paychecks and stopping an entire industry in its tracks, was precisely for the regulation and limitation of AI use in the writing process.
And then here you have it, this multi-million-dollar Netflix cash cow, the exact kind of prestige production the union was fighting to protect, potentially using the very tools the writers were striking again.
Quietly. Behind this.
It perfectly illustrates that tension between the public-facing union demands, the big fight for human art, and the quiet, data-driven, cost-cutting realities that production companies are always pursuing.
Which is where we have to dig in and really analyze the likely use case for those open tabs.
Yeah.
We have to contrast the fan assumptions with the practical reality of what this technology can actually do right now.
Okay, so there are really two possible paths here.
Path 1 is the nuclear option. This is the fan assumption. They were literally just being lazy, feeding complex character data and plot points into ChatGPT and saying,
Write me a paragraph.
Yeah, or generate some dialogue for Eleven and Dustin in this highly emotional scene.
And that's the scenario that generates the most outrage, the most fear among writers. But based on the current state of large LLM, it's actually the least practical option for building a complex story.
Why? Why is it impractical for something like Stranger Things?
It's because of a technical limitation called the context window problem. These models have a very limited memory.
They forget things.
They forget things, yes. They struggle really badly with long-form continuity, with complex character arcs that weave through multiple episodes, and with maintaining a specific, nuanced, emotional...
So you could ask it to write a scene, and it might spit out some okay dialogue.
It might, yeah. But then if you ask it to reference a small detail from a scene you had it write 3 weeks ago, it frequently just forgets, or even worse, it makes something up. It hallucinates a detail.
So it can write a decent sentence, but it can't manage a whole season-long story Bible that respects all the established lore and emotional stake?
Exactly. For that, you still need the human mind. You need the writer to hold that high-level continuity and tone. Which brings us to the second and much, much more likely scenario for why those tabs. Using the AI as a superpowered research tool, a search engine on steroids.
Right. For those quick, fact-based questions you need an answer to right now in the writer's room or on set.
Things like, what kind of guns did the U.S. military actually use in the 1980s? Or what slang terms were popular in a small town in Indiana in 1986?
The kind of rapid, specific historical flavor that the show needs constant to feel authentic.
And this is the great gray area. This is what the unions are struggling to define, because that line between research and writing is blurring so fast.
Oh, so?
Because of the technology itself. We have to remember, even if you just use a traditional search engine like Google now, what's the first thing you see?
An AI overview.
An AI overview. So using an LLM for quick fact-based research is now just baked into the digital reality of how we find information.
But if the writers are just asking it for historical facts, is that writing the show? I mean, narratively, no. But it is definitely assisting the writers. And, crucially, it's streamlining a research process that a human researcher might otherwise get paid to do.
And that's where the other part of the anger comes from, this feeling of unprofessionalism.
The sources cite a user on Blue Sky who complained about this exact thing, about using what is basically a free, consumer-grade product on a massive production.
Yeah, the user pointed out all the industry advice that tells aspiring screenwriters to go out and buy expensive professional software like Final Draft, stuff that's designed for collaboration and proper formatting.
And instead, here you have these high-level producers on a, quote, multi-million-dollar Netflix cash cow who are allegedly using Google Docs and generative AI.
Tools that are seen as amateur, cheap. It suggests this low-cost, streamlined, maybe even sloppy approach that just feels beneath the prestige of a global franchise.
So the anger isn't just about the technology itself. It's about the perceived sloppiness that goes with it, which just fuels that fear that the executives don't really respect the craft anymore.
That digital footprint of the open tab became the physical evidence of guilt for the fans. Even if the actual crime was just using a new kind of research tool, the audience was already primed to believe the show's quality was declining because of corporate mandates.
And the open tab gave them the perfect technological villain to blame for it. So that moves us from this one specific scandal to the core conflict it really brings to light. And that's the industry's visceral, really emotional reaction to AI versus the cold, hard logic of the executive suite.
Right.
And let's start with the emotional side, because the sources paint a really vivid picture of how the creative community is reacting to all of this.
You really do. There's this one consistent, overwhelming through. According to the source material, there is absolutely nothing that Hollywood actors and fans hate more right now than AI.
And there's this specific observation that actors, when they talk about AI, they almost can't discuss it without using really strong negative language.
It's an immediate, intense FAI level of intensity.
The source material calls it a pervasive brainworm, like an idea that has so infested every actor that it prevents them from having a clever or reasoned or even just a nuanced take on the technology.
They're speaking from a place of pure existential fear. Fear that their faces, their voices, their very essence as performers is about to be digitized, commodified.
And this fear, the sources argue, is having a direct negative effect on the quality of creativity itself.
How so?
Well, the argument is that because today's creative people are reacting out of fear of being replaced, fear of losing their income, rather than a desire to engage with the technology creatively. Any story that's written competently about AI tends to be from an older era.
From a time when the threat was still theoretical.
Exactly. Because they lack the emotional distance from the subject to write something nuanced or insightful about this technology that they view as an immediate job-killing threat.
Right. So the sources point to shows like Person of Interest, which started over a decade ago, or classic science fiction.
Right.
Those works were written before generative AI could actually do what it can do now. So the writers could explore the philosophical questions without the immediate financial threat clouding their judgment.
When you write from a place of panic, you tend to write, polemic, not balanced, compelling drama.
But no matter how much emotional turmoil or visceral reaction there is from the artist, we have to look at the other side, the undeniable economic drivers. This is where the executive perspective just completely steamrolls the artistic endeavor.
So we shift to the capitalist calculus, which is simple and relent.
It really is. Data-driven capitalist companies, doesn't matter if it's Netflix, Disney, a music label, a studio, they will always prioritize their bottom line. Fiscal prudence, shareholder responsibility. They do what is most efficient.
They don't ultimately care about the artistic endeavor in that abstract, romantic sense. They care about sellable IP.
They care about efficiency, output, and minimizing risk. And that commercial drive guarantees what our sources call the inevitability doctrine.
And what's that?
That AI will increasingly encroach on human creativity and output, whether the unions or the fans like's going to happen.
And the expansion here is key, right? We're not just talking about saving salary on one writer.
No. We're talking about streamlining the entire production pipeline and managing risk. A human writer might demand create. A human composer might deliver a score that's unexpected.
A generative AI tool gives you exactly what the corporate mandate requires,
which is easily iterable, low risk, and immediately marketable content.
This brings us to this idea of lukewarm content that the sources mention. If the AI output isn't excellent, but it's just sufficient, why is that still so attractive to a company? Wouldn't subpar content eventually hurt their bottom line?
You'd think so, but that's the critical challenge. In the age of streaming and algorithmic distribution, the goal often isn't groundbreaking. It's consistency and maximize
Watching.
just keeping them on the platform. So lukewarm content, if it's produced consistently and it closely follows known profitable trends, let's merge the top 5 shows from last quarter. That's a much safer bet than expensive, high-risk, genuinely original work.
Algorithms reward consistency and predictability.
Exact. The content is just sufficient enough to hold the consumer, but cheap enough to maximize profit. Can't compete with that, which is where that pervasive anxiety comes from, usually in the form of a joke about being personally replaced.
Right. The source material has this grim joke about hosts and producers, people like us, being replaced.
The fear is palpable. Why pay a human a full salary with health insurance, retirement, and residuals when you can hire a low-cost AI version for what, $5 and whatever the internet connection costs?
To produce consistent, if generic, output.
Yeah, and this connects back to an academic angle that the sources cite, which puts the emphasis purely on the out.
There was this analogy from a host who taught college students right when ChatGPT was first booming.
What was the instruction?
It was clear. If a student could produce work that met the required standards using AI, then they were effectively hacking the system.
So the ultimate measure is just performance, regardless of the... If the Duffer brothers were using an LLM to quickly check a fact about 1980s military hardware, and the result was a factually accurate, high-quality, why is that fundamentally different from using Google or hiring an expensive...
The technology is just another tool. Cheaper, more efficient.
The problem starts when the corporate impulse takes that idea efficiency and begins to replace the human creative entirely. That is the line so desperate.
But as we're about to see, other industries are already finding their ship is leaking pretty badly. They've already crossed that quality threshold. So let's broaden this out beyond just Hollywood screenwriting, because the sources are pretty clear that the music industry is arguably even further down this road of total disruption.
Oh yeah. The general consensus from the source material is stark. The music industry is cooked.
That's a strong statement.
It's provocative, but it's backed up by the sheer power and a demonstrable quality of the AI-generated tracks we're hearing now. We're talking about AI generating entire songs from scratch, or maybe even more unsettling, rewriting famous songs and completely changing the genre.
Like taking a pop hit and rendering it perfectly in the style of 1990s grunge.
Or generating a country ballad that sounds exactly like a specific famous artist.
And a lot of listeners are finding these tracks, unbelievable or pretty good. This isn't that theoretical, tinny 1980s synthesized music. This is commercially viable output that has crossed a really crucial threshold of quality.
And the ease of replication combined with distribution, that's the killer blow. And AI can produce 1,000 different tracks based on a successful algorithm in a single day.
The human artist needs years, multiple takes, expensive studios, personal drama.
Exactly. And as the sources point out, this change is fundamentally altering our relationship with music.
As that deep personal connection with a human artist decreases, the sources say that seeing a band live will eventually become a case of dour.
Meaning what, exactly?
Something highly niche, specialized. Kind of like how people view vinyl records today, an expensive, dedicated, enthusiast pursuit. But it's no longer the mainstream way people consume music.
The emotional investment in the singer's journey gets replaced by the efficiency of the stream.
And the label, as these data-driven capitalist companies, will inevitably move toward what they can streamline and control. And that brings us to a specific, real-world example of an AI artist who actually topped the charts.
Solomon Ray.
Solomon Ray. And we should clarify for everyone, that's Ray, R-A-Y, not Solomon Kane, the movie character.
Right. And he, or it, achieved major real-world commercial success, topped the gospel charts for a couple.
And what kind of music was it produced?
It was described as Christmas music that sounded exactly like a known contemporary high-level artist. The comments specifically suggested it sounded like Chris.
And the crucial point here is how indistinguishable it was.
Completely. The sources note that if you were listening to it in your car or you heard it playing softly in a grocery store, you would not know that
it was generic enough to be commercially viable, high quality enough to be mistaken for a star,
and completely undetectable as AI by a casual listener. It filled a niche perfectly with zero human cost or maintenance.
And this just confirms the executive calculus for the music industry. The labels are data-driven. They will inevitably move away from human artists who cost a fortune in advances, touring, emotional unpredictability.
Control issues.
Yeah, control issues. And move toward controllable, streamlined AI music production. If the synthetic costs nothing to maintain, it can still top the charts. They're going to make the choice that benefits the corporate ledger every single time.
And this efficiency shift leads us perfectly into the film and TV acting world, where the exact same economic drivers are leading to the rise of what the industry is now calling synthetic.
Synthetic. Yeah, it sounds, like you said, chillingly like the replicants from Blade Runner.
And that's what they are. AI-generated performers whose likenesses, voices, even their emotional expressions are entirely controlled by
The sources detail a specific marketed example of this. An AI performer being promoted as the next big thing named Tilly Norwood.
The Tilly Norwoods of the world represent a terrifying economic proposition for actors. They eliminate the need for a salary, for residuals, for trailers, health insurance, schedule conflict, all of it.
Which is where the union, SAG-AFTRA, led by Duncan Crabtree Ireland, had to come up with a really aggressive defense mechanism for this.
Their strategy is to price fix everything.
Let's break down what that means, price fix, because it's a direct attempt to hack that capitalist calculus we were just talking about.
It is. The union's rationale is to eliminate the primary, most compelling benefit of using a synthetic in the first, the cost saving.
So their goal is to mandate, through their bargaining agreement, that a synthetic like Tilly Norwood must cost the employer the exact same amount as hiring a top-tier, highly paid human actor.
Like an Emma Stone or a Viola Davis. They want to make the Tilly Norwood digital avatar an extravagant perk, not a bargain.
The belief is that if the synthetic costs a fortune anyway, that lack of cost savings will dissuade employers from using them instead of real act. It forces the executive to choose the human, or so they hope.
But the sources immediately start to question how effective that strategy, because while it addresses the money, it fails to address all the other major benefits synthetics offer an executive.
Even if Tilly Norwood costs the same as a top human actor, the benefit analysis might still overwhelmingly favor the AI. And this is where we need to step into that executive office and look at the cold, rational decision-making process. Why would you choose the synthetic Tilly Norwood over a human, even if the union successfully makes the price the same?
The answer is control and the elimination of liability. The sources outline all these overwhelming benefits from the executive point of view that have nothing to do with saving salary. A synthetic performer cannot cause a PR crisis. They can't get arrested. They can't demand to renegotiate their contract and shoot.
They can't get in a car crash on the way to set, delaying production for months and triggering massive insurance claims.
They will show up on time every day the second the animators clock in. They are a completely predictable employee who does exactly what the script and the schedule say. They demand nothing. They say nothing unless they're programmed.
You eliminate the messy, costly element of human error and human agency.
And that control factor becomes so important, especially in a world that the sources describe as a post-celebrity society.
Meaning we have thousands of mini influencers and TikTok stars, but very few actual genuine movie stars left who can reliably open a movie just based on their name.
Exactly. So if you're an executive choosing between a semi-famous human who might cause a PR headache, the actor suddenly announces she hates the director or has a substance abuse problem right before a press tour.
Or a perfectly controllable AI that just requires clean data input.
The cost-benefit analysis may still heavily favor Tilly Norwood, even if the price is the same. Control, risk mitigation, predictability, those things are often more valuable to a corporation than pure cost.
Absolutely. The elimination of human liability is arguably the biggest incentive of all. Now, this is where the discussion takes a necessary and an incredibly dark turn.
It does. Because the source material introduces an element of Hollywood culture that the sheer efficiency of synthetics unexpectedly disrupts.
Wait, you're saying the AI solution is too efficient? In what way?
In a specific, deeply disturbing. The sources suggest that from the executive's perspective, one major structural loss of using a completely controllable AI like Tilly Norwood is that she won't be susceptible to giving sexual favors in exchange hired.
Wow.
The executive loses the power dynamic of the casting couch.
That is just staggering. The technology that threatens to upend the entire labor system also has the potential to eliminate a historical abusive power structure, and the executive class views that elimination as a loss in their cost-benefit analysis.
That's the exact cynical insight that the source material provides, and this realization leads directly to this dark joke or speculation that's cited in the sources.
What's that?
That the next logical step would be to merge the sex robot, the physical embodiment of control, with the creative capacities of the AI.
To what end?
The ultimate disturbing goal would be to save money, retain the abuse of power, and satisfy the executive desire to have the casting couch. The fictional executive's attitude becomes, yeah, we love saving money, but we love the ability to exert coercive power even more.
And what makes this observation so potent is that the source material takes time to affirm that the casting couch is absolutely not a relic of the past, despite all the high-profile industry.
It remains a deeply embedded practice, and we have a specific recent example to prove it. The controversy around the actress Charlotte Kirk. It really illuminated the transactional nature of this very recently.
What happened there?
It was revealed that she had been having sex with multiple executives and directors in exchange for the promise of role.
And the sources detail what some might call a successful casting couch.
Right. Kirk is now engaged to the director Neil Marshall. He directed The Descent, and he's announced that he will only be making films from now on. The quid pro quo seems to have, cemented a long-term part.
But the truly embarrassing and highly revealing detail was a text exchange.
An exchange she had with the executive Brett Ratner had basically pawned her off onto another executive to fulfill the promise of a role. She has sex with this other executive, and then she texts Ratner just flatly asking,
Okay, I had sex with the dude. When am I getting the roles?
It just strips away all the pretense, all the flowery language, and it shows the cold, transactional nature of and the source material highlights how Hollywood often frames these in its own moves.
They don't frame the dynamic as coercion or a power imbalance that victimizes the woman?
No, instead it's often framed as the ambitious woman who knows what she needs to do to get ahead. She's using her sexuality as a tool to navigate a
They cite examples like G-Man from Tropic Thunder as a kind of Hollywood self-satire.
The narrative becomes, this woman came from the Midwest, she knew what she wanted, and she was willing to do whatever it took to get it, even if that meant entertaining a bunch of lyrist dudes who didn't have a moral bone.
The irony is just staggering. AI, this technological force that threatens all of labor, has the potential to eliminate a deeply entrenched historical system of abuse by creating performers who cannot be coerced.
And the executive's immediate cynical calculation is, but wait, we lose the casting. This dark cultural practice is apparently more precious to them than maximizing pure profit alone.
It reveals a profound truth about the power structures in Hollywood. Control and the ability to abuse that power are fundamental, non-negotiable benefits, even when you measure them against enormous economic efficiency gains.
Tilly Norwood threatens the structure, not just the payroll.
So this brings us to the broader labor implication. We need to move beyond just the writers and the star act and look at the people who are actively building this AI infrastructure, the people on the lower levels of the creative hierarchy.
Because the crisis isn't limited to the people whose jobs are being replaced by the AI's output. It extends to the people who are currently creating the work that will train their own event replacement.
It's a truly difficult ethical dilemma for the individual worker.
Let's talk about the animator's dilemma, which is mentioned specifically. These are people with highly specialized, sought-after, but their work sacrificial.
Absolutely. The sources talk about how animators who are still working for major studios like Disney or other production studios, they are essentially being hired with the tacit understanding that their work,
their human-generated art, their style, their years of experience,
is being used to train the AI that will put them out of a job later.
It's a difficult, almost tragic position to be in. You're being paid now, but the product of your labor is designed at a systemic level to optimize your own future obsolescence.
You are literally feeding the machine that will inevitably consume your profession. It is, as the source material puts it, a ship that is going down slow.
And this indicates that we are heading toward what a lot of thinkers have talked about for years, this idea of a post-labor society.
A theoretical future where people won't need to work anymore for the resources they need to survive, all thanks to automation and abundant AI-driven productivity.
But the sources are quick to emphasize that the rough part isn't going to be that final utopian state of post-labor. The rough part will be the difficult trend.
That period will be marked by massive unemployment or severe underemployment for a huge number of people, at least until society manages to come out on the other side and restructure its whole economic relationship to labor.
And that transition phase is characterized by intense anxiety. It's exactly the kind of brainworm fear that we talked about earlier.
You see the ship sinking, but you still need to find a life raft. And the life raft isn't fighting the water.
It's learning how to pilot the new technology.
Which brings us to the survival tactic that the sources suggest. For those who are still in the creative industries, the best way to stay aboard this slowly sinking ship is not resist, it's integration.
It's to actively learn and use the new AI technology, to stop being the human labor that is replaced by the AI and start becoming the human expert who guides it, steers it, finds it.
You become a prompt engineer, a quality checker.
Or the human who maintains the contextual consistency that the current LLMs still struggle with. You become the editor of the AI.
But it requires a fundamental and probably painful shift in your skills and your perspective.
You can't win against the inevitability of the technology. Your only choice is how you and whether you lead the transition or you get swept away by it.
So to synthesize what we've covered in this deep dive, we started with the most specific, tiny detail you can imagine.
A blurry digital footprint in a documentary about strings.
And it quickly blossomed into this exploration of the structural and cultural foundations of the entire creative economy. That digital footprint, the open ChatGPT tab, it showed us the inevitability of AI adoption, even if it's just for low-level research.
Well, at the same time, the WGA strike highlights the powerful, fearful resistance of labor. We saw that the core issue wasn't just poor quality, but this perception of sloppiness and the elimination of human research jobs.
The financial motivations were made crystal clear through the music. The Solomon Ray example showed that indistinguishable, efficient AI output trumps human cost, which leads to that consensus that the industry is cooked.
And in the acting world, the union's counter-strategy with Tilly Norwood was to try to engage in price fix, hoping to discourage executives by getting rid of the initial cost.
Ultimately, the whole debate is framed by emotion, existential fear, and the concept of craft on one side, the artist.
And cold, hard, data-driven efficiency, risk management, and the corporate ledger on the other, the executives.
But that dark subtext, revealed by the executive calculation, is maybe the most shocking and profound insight of all.
The realization that the executives valued the abusive power dynamics of the casting couch so highly that they considered AI's elimination of that ability to coerce to be a significant loss.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you to mull over. If Hollywood executives are willing to joke, even cynically, about creating an AI sex doll merger just to preserve an unethical transactional power structure that a simple controllable AI like Tilly Norwood threatened to eliminate, what existing human roles in Hollywood are truly safe from automation?
And more disturbingly, what parts of the industry's archaic, abusive culture are now revealed to be more precious to them than simple profit and efficiency.
Think about that the next time you hear an algorithmically generated Christmas carol in the grocery store.